Kimmy here. Who else would it be? This is the Observations with Otsu for May 12th. Hope you've had a good weekend, a good week in general if you don't finish this video. And also please like, subscribe if you do like this video. Get all that stuff out of the way because I know a lot of people don't want me to rant on that. I will talk about my Patreon here in just a second. But for the most part, Bitcoin had a pretty good run. We had a really good run for the past week. So we will discuss this. This is a weekly time frame video. For those of you that may not know, had a lot of new followers recently. Bitcoin, Ethereum, Solana on the weekly. We'll cover the daily as well. We might kind of gravitate to the 2 week, possibly 1 month. Just depends on. We're going to kind of freestyle that part to see, what things look like. We will talk about Aroon a lot today because it did cross bullishly on Bitcoin. So we'll talk about that. We also will look at the total market caps, 1, 2, 3. We'll also look at Bitcoin dominance. So go ahead and get a soda or drink ready, whatever you want, coffee, and let's just get started. So first things first, if you are looking for a community that's trading focused, I do have a pretty tight-knit group of people. You can discuss things, you don't have to, but we have a group where we post videos every day, and then we look at different coins on the market. We look at the good, bad, the ugly. I try to frame things in a reference with entries, stop loss, take profits. I try to be reasonable with this. Sometimes they are a little bit boring, and I say that as a good thing actually because I get into the nitty-gritty. A lot of people, a lot of influencers especially, like that have a lot of followers, try to fluff things up. I'm not a fluffy my personality is not a fluffy one, so I try to focus on the nitty gritty. I just focus on the stats, okay? And if some people don't like it, that's completely fine. But what we do is we do about 5 videos per week. We also have some bots. We also have some other things as well. So just a little quick thing. Here's some of the videos that we've been doing recently. I did a weekly video review on May 10th. I actually did one yesterday. I'm going to do another one today. So usually Sunday through Thursdays is when I do a video. And on Thursday, I do a review video covering what we've covered for the week. And that the reason I do that is to have a follow-up, honestly. And two, because I do these trades too. These are my trades that I do for myself, and a lot of people just kind of follow along. Or, I mean, they don't follow along as trade necessarily. You guys do whatever you want. That's not really the scope of the group. As far as the videos go, the videos are just telling you my thoughts. And so the reason I bring this up is because I feel like this is pretty unique in the space. One, I post my videos. I'm very tangible with it. You can see here I covered 30 coins on the 10th. Okay, that was 2 days ago. And how many people are covering 30 coins a week? And I'm covering that basically. So that's about 5 or 6 coins per video, 5 or 6 different coins. Okay, and so a lot of those also incorporate coins we talked about from previous weeks. So there's lots of follow-ups on this. And really, the goal is: do they hit their profit targets? If they do, great. We record it. We talk about it. We don't necessarily brag, nothing like that. We just record it on the spreadsheet. And if they fail, we talk about why they failed, and then we try to, incorporate like how can we do this differently? Like what happened? Like is it just something? Like is there something that we can fix about it? Was it just a bad trade? So we do trial and error with that. We work together on that. So that's why I think this is unique, because first of all, I don't think there's that many groups that do follow-ups. They just post their thoughts for the week. Oh, it's going to be this bullish or bearish. Here's, I'm charging you 200, they're charging you $200 a month. I'm not. I'm only, it's much lower than that. Much lower than that. And so, and that's where I feel like a lot of people want this instead. And maybe they don't. I don't know. That's not what I'm here for, to try to convince you or not convince you. It's just a group that we kind of follow along together. I post these, we talk about them, and then you also have the Aroon bots that I do. And that's another unique thing is we are very Aroon focused. There's literally like 30 people in the whole world probably doing this. There's not a lot of people that are doing Aroon the way that I do it, and so I feel like that is a unique angle on that. I've had some history, successful history in doing that. So anyway, just kind of wanted to fit that in. So I know nobody ever likes a plug necessarily, and that's not designed to be a plug, but I just focusing on that. So one more very quick thing. I just made a partnership with BloFin. I'm going to leave a special link in the description where you can sign up for their bonus. Honestly, I'm not quite sure what the bonus is. I think it is a deposit bonus, but I don't remember the stats. It'll be posted in there. Not going to spend too much time on it. I just started this like last week. And honestly, I might just put like a 3-second thing in here in the future. So anyway, just bringing that up as well. Link will be in the description. Let's get started into what you're here for, which is the charts. All right, so first things first, we are a little bit red for the today, so I do want to have something a little preemptive. I had a Bitcoin brief video yesterday, which is the daily time frame and the 4-hour time frames. And so one of the big things I said is that we could drop pretty significantly. I think it was on this level right here. We could drop as low as 94,400. I think I mentioned 95, but it's really the lower end of this target. We could drop pretty significantly. We're still above this band here, the pre-parabolic trend line. And so this is still a retest from my perspective. Now, a lot of people are going to try to tell you that this is bearish, and I'm like, come on, we just had a 30% rally on Bitcoin. We had like 35, 40% on Ethereum. A lot of coins went 100, 200x, or not 200, oh my gosh, 200x. I'd be retired. 200%, I should say. So like Dog with Hat was one that we talked about in our group, that went, 2, 3x. A lot of these did. So a 3% drop is going to be normal. So just understand that I things have changed as far as like we're no longer in a chop or a whipsaw, things like that. We and when that happens, when you start to kind of impulse and start to actually move and get liquidity, things are going to go up and down much more, and that's a good thing. It's a good thing because one, you can get in, and two, you can take profits, things like that. So use that to your advantage. You should always be using the charts to your advantage. Find a way that it works for you. Don't try to shape the charts into what you want. You need to shape into the charts what the charts are telling you. Big difference there. And I think that is one of the key problems that people have with trading. They already have a disposition. A lot of people say this, you got to have a bias, or you have a bias. Everybody has a bias, bias. Not necessarily. Okay, I understand what they're trying to say, but when you open up your computer or when you turn on your monitor, or your phone, whatever it is, you need to look and see what the markets, what the charts are telling you. Don't go in trying to force a chart to look a certain way or force a tariff news to look a certain way. A lot of people yesterday were saying that the Chinese deal was going to be bullish, and here we are with a drop down. It didn't do anything. Okay, so I mean, you could make an argument it did something towards the beginning of the day, and now that we're in closer to daily close, it's snapping back. But this is all relative as far as the charts go. Like a 2 or 3% snapback is perfectly healthy. I honestly, I think a 10 to 15% is healthy at this stage. So that's kind of like the introduction of what I want you to know. Don't don't expect things to just be all fireworks necessarily. You got to understand like these drops can be buy opportunities. They can be retests. These are all healthy, right? So I'm going to go to the Bitcoin dominance chart and the total market caps. I'm going to kind of probably spitfire this just a little bit. So the dominance chart here, it's gone a pretty decent drop so far. We're about 4 or 5%, or just 4%, sorry, since the top here. This is something I talked about in last week's observations with Otsu, that at this weekly level, actually it was way up above here, was really critical. Sorry, I'm trying to got hiccups again. It's about 4.1% on that. So that's going to be a key thing. If we drop below here about the 60%, I think that that's really going to kick in gear the alt season. I'm not afraid to talk about that. Okay. We had a drop on the RSI below here to 57. That's fine. I don't really look at this the way I look at price action necessarily. It's more of just a general guidance rule on this. So we'll see how this goes. I think this is healthy overall for the markets, that we get this drop. The last week, keep in mind that most of this, like, don't correlate this current price action like red and be like, well, Bitcoin's dominance is going down, coins are going down. It's stupid. Excuse me. Coins are not going down. They're actually going up versus when this started. This started at the beginning of last week. Okay, it was at 65% roughly. And altcoins went up since then. And we'll talk about that. That's why I want to talk about the total market caps, because they actually went up instead. And this is where this is where correlation can really cause you to create false correlations that don't exist and are actually the opposite of what you think that they are. Okay, that's why I don't correlate anything. I look at what the markets are telling me. Okay, you can of course put things together. You should, but don't try to correlate. don't force a correlation. You should never really even be thinking about that. Okay, so we can take a look at that as far as the total market cap. And you can see here, so this is with Bitcoin, that the market actually went up instead. Okay, it did not go down, it went up. Okay, so for last week's candle alone, went up about 12%, a little over that, in fact. So that's a good. You need to understand that the dominance chart should go down most time. I'm not saying it's correlated either, but what I am saying is, in many cases, the Bitcoin dominance will go down when the markets are going up as a whole. Okay, if Bitcoin dominance is going up, that means typically what the Bitcoin dominance really means is just the dominance of Bitcoin in the market. That's all it means. You shouldn't necessarily think too hard into that all the time. Okay, it doesn't. There's not always this strict correlation for anything. Okay, at the most, correlations are like 50% for anything, even with the S&P 500. And so what that also tells me is that 50% of the time is not as well. So here's the thing: if you're looking at that 50% correlation and you're trying to make money off of that correlation, then that's less than 50% of the time. Okay. Whereas if you try to look at it not correlated, you have the same 50%. So it doesn't make sense to me why you would want to focus on something that has a less, by default, it has less than 50%. So that's a lower probability. So I don't understand why that would be the case. But with the total market cap, we have the push up to the upside. More importantly, it reclaimed this zone. So if it holds this for the weekly, about 3.1, it's going to be good. I actually quite like the fact that we're getting a really solid red Monday here, because that should give us a bounce for the rest of the week. A lot of people think that this means the top is in. I couldn't disagree more. I'm not saying it is or it isn't. I'm just saying, like, I almost never judge the market based off its first day because of the wick rule I put on my strategy. Almost every candle has 2 wicks, okay? Like here. So we have very little wick to the downside. That means it's probably going to go up. We'll see where it goes, but that's the weekly on the total 1. Now the total 2 is going to exclude Bitcoin. And so let's see how it goes here. It actually ran almost to 2 levels, about 18.5%, so much more significant. So you can see how the Bitcoin dominance dropped down by about 4%, but without Bitcoin, the market actually went up 18%. See what I'm saying? That's what I'm talking about. That's that Bitcoin dominance, effect that I'm looking for. So a few things here. One, we did not get above the zone here. We got very, very close, but we got right under the resistance. RSI did flip 50, so that's a pretty good marker. Not always a good indicator because this was kind of a chop up, and this was too. So not very significant on the totals. But the Bitcoin wedge is getting pretty good here, so it's kind of squeezing. That's typically a good sign that we'll get something maybe like this. That's certainly possible. It probably might be more like this, where we'll get this little hook. So maybe this, maybe not, or it's too early to tell with that. So it really depends on the cross level. Lower cross conviction here was at 9%. So we'll see. Right now, it could go as high as 64%, which is where the line is for the bears. So we'll see. We still have some time. If it goes up above, I guess a new high here within the next couple weeks, that might change. So we'll see. So it's optimistic, just purely optimistic there. So total 3 is without Bitcoin and Ethereum, and it still did pretty good, but about 12%. So not as high, but still, still pretty decent. So about the same as with Bitcoin, right? So you had to push up against the zone. You had to reclaim. So you're back above this 823 trillion roughly marker. You had a high bullish cross. This is what I'm looking at. This is something that let me look at from the total 1 again. Let's see here. It did have a high bullish cross too, and I say that because Bitcoin does as well. And this is very interesting. So without Ethereum, like, the market's still much cleaner. Even though Ethereum had like a 18% run or something crazy, like, the market is still better off without it so far. So Ethereum still needs to run up pretty well. We'll see how that goes. But you have a high cross here at about 64, 66%. So that's very good. That's what we want. So when you get a high bullish cross above 50% and an RSI above 50%, things do tend to rally. So you have a lower cross here. That was a big consolidation. Here you had a low one here, but this also expanded. So it's not always the case on either direction. It could vary. But so far, this is a pretty good sign. We have a reclaim above the zone. That's really good. Your marker on this, your next marker is really just going to be getting above, 920. Again, a lot of this is going to be abstract on the market cap, but this is just an idea of showing the strength and momentum. Alts are clearly doing pretty good. The whole market's really recovering pretty well, and I quite like this. I think there's a lot of continuation that could happen. So, anyway, that is the dominance and the total market caps. Let's go on to Bitcoin on the weekly. All right, Bitcoin here on the weekly. Now, when we get above closer to the all-time range, which is crazy to me because a lot of people are not treating this like we should be super excited right now, and like there's only like 25% of people that are excited. It's really crazy. Like we're basically on the verge of celebrating all-time high. Like we went into wick territory from the previous range, and there's like nothing. Okay, and so we're still above 6 digits. So I don't understand. Anyway, when you get to this point, it starts to be hard to look at things from a price action standpoint. This is exactly why I'm a hybrid trader, by the way, because when some things can't always, like, I like price action quite a bit. I think it's one of the most fundamentally clean textbook ways to trade. Absolutely. So when you're in a big old range, it works perfect. It's just amazing. Now that being said, not everything works with price action. It's a very horizontal way of trading. Okay. The problem is Bitcoin is a very parabolical asset, and so is the stock market, a lot of other things. So that's where trends come into play. Trends and momentum come into play, and that's why I'm a hybrid trader. So Apex, as you guys maybe know, that's the name of my group. It stands for Aroon Price Action Exponential. Okay, that's why I named it that way. It's not because it's a fancy name. It stands for Aroon Price Action Exponential, and the reason I do that is because those are the types of things I try to use for trading. So I say that to say it's going to be hard to do this from a price action standpoint on the weekly. The best thing I can do on a high time frame level is look at things from a trend perspective. And we had a previous trend here that actually it worked pretty well, but then all of a sudden it didn't. So this is no longer really active, right? And so that's something that you can look at. But from here, you still have some price action to work with. You have your swing high order block right here. Swing highs are when you target the previous top on the closing candles and the previous top on the wicks. And so you have this level. So we stopped just below it. Okay. I'd say probably close enough. We got just under it on the weekly. This will depend on your exchange, by the way. I'm still using Binance, which is the highest market share. And so we had somewhat of a rejection here. Still too early to tell because we're still got 6 days into this candle. And so that's what we got to work with. On the low side, you have this here. And so this is what you got to work with. This is that 94, 95,000 or 93, 94,000 range I was telling you about. I think it's 95 on the daily because of the wicks, I guess. So this is the level that we're working with. As long as we're within this zone, I think we are just going to basically stay within the zone. That makes sense, right? Like we're going to stay in the zone because we're in the zone, right? So, but the breaks of those zones are going to be where we can try to tangibly figure out things. So from a long perspective, if you're above this zone, I absolutely think this is very healthy. This is going to be a pretty short stop loss, or so that's something you got to look at. Let's say, as far as targets go, this is where things will get very interesting. I think the next logical target is honestly just a trend line move going up to here. A pre-parabolic trend line is what I call it. That's about 126. Probably just, yeah. To really push it up, I think you could probably go 128. And so you could probably get there, reject. And keep in mind that's also if it does that within the next 2 weeks. Because the farther out you go, the longer it could get. So just keep that in mind. And so that we could go as high as that without going parabolic. And I think there's a mistake here where people think, well, if we go above 110,000, we're going to just rally forever. And that's not necessarily the case. We still need to break out of this because this is a channel. Okay, basically. It's not the best channel, but I'm just giving you an abstract of what this what this looks like. This is basically a big old channel. You even got a midline here, right? So, and I honestly don't really like channels that much, but we're basically at a midline of the channel, and that's kind of what we're working with. Let me see if I can get one here. Pitchfork. Does this work? I haven't done channels in so long. I don't know if it works out really well, so sorry. So you basically got a rough idea of what that looks like. Maybe I'll just get rid of the other ones. So that's what that looks like. Actually, I just got rid of the channel. There we go. Anyway, you get the idea, right? So that's what I'm looking at, and that does kind of match up, I should say. And so I'm not a channel person, by the way. So just keep that in mind. That's not the reason I'm doing this, but this makes sense. Okay, you had a run up through here, retest, or not quite a retest, but you had a consolidation here on the edge, touch here, hitting the mid. So all that makes sense to me. So as long as we're with, and so the reason I say this, because even though I don't like channels that much, channels do help. As long as we are within this channel, we are maintaining a flow of supply and demand. That's where a lot of people don't really understand that. Like there can be an upward flow of supply and demand, and so as long as we're within this range, it's going to continue to kind of range upward. Okay, if we break down here, then we're going to accelerate more down to the downward. If we go up, we're going to go parabolic. So that's where channels go. There's an agreement that supply and demand are going to flow together in a certain direction. That's the whole point of channels. And so once that channel conditions break, that means supply either outweighs demand by a huge amount or demand outweighs supply by a huge amount. And so you're going to get an acceleration of one side or the other. So something to keep in mind. And so that also makes sense because you actually want to look at this from a short side as well. If this breaks below here, you could also do a short here. But the problem is, even if you go down here, you only have a 2R for one, so it's much lower. But also, you're going to break the channel. And so that's going to be very interesting. We have limited downside to work with still, relatively speaking. Now, that's still going to be like 15 to 20%. And so this is going to be basically about 16 or 17% roughly, depending on where. And that's going to get shorter the more that you go in. So if it waits, if we don't move till August, well, first of all, if we don't move till August, we deserve to go down probably. But it's going to get shorter. Now we could consolidate within this channel, okay, over the next couple months, and then move up. That's what I'm actually looking at for Q3. I've told people before. I think I've said this for about a month now. Q1 was really bad. I think Q2, before Q2 got good, I said Q2 would probably be good. I think Q3 will be a chop, and I think Q4 is going to be one of the best quarters in the past 4 years. And so that's what I'm looking at. And so what is it? January, February, March, April, May, June. So like starting in July will be Q3, I think. So correct me if I'm wrong. I'm trying to do everything on the fly here. And so that's going to be about, where's that? Right here. So we're pretty close into going into the third quarter. So I would not be surprised if we actually kind of move up just a little bit and then we kind of curve into Q3. We do maybe like an upward chop a little bit. So I would not be surprised if we don't break 130 by September, um, or maybe even October. And to me that makes sense, and that does kind of flow in step with what has taken place in previous cycles as well. So just keep that in mind. And so what we could do, and so let's say was it October, November, December. So was it October is right here? Okay, it's right there roughly. So I would not be surprised if we just, you know, kind of push up against this and we kind of come back a little bit. I don't know. We'll see how that goes. Anyway, kind of chop a little bit, maybe like a little bit of a bullish chop. We get to like 115, 120 by the end of quarter three, or maybe even above here. I think that would even be good. So we still have to be below 125. But then in Q4, we actually rally up here. And so we actually break the channel, go above 150, and then we go even higher to 200,000. So we'll see. And I think a lot of people don't understand that even though that doesn't, quarter three sounds very boring, that's probably going to be your last chance to get in, because it's already May. Like it's the fifth month of the year. We're almost halfway through the year. So you might have 6 to 8 months left in the bull market. I don't think people understand that. A lot of people are excited, and I think you should be. But also, like I was thinking about this while I was washing dishes today. It was like the bear market will show up before you know it. Okay? So that's where like I'm always trying to think 3 to 5 steps ahead. It's not always a good thing because I'm thinking like, man, 3 to 5 steps from now, the market's going to be over. The cycle's going to be over. And so you just got to understand that. And so that's a good thing because you can piece together, well, where are your positions at now? What do you want them to look like? How are you going to take profits? Things like that. So there's something to keep in mind as you're kind of going back and forth with that. So anyway, that's Bitcoin on the weekly. I did quite a few stuff on that. I don't think I'll really cover the daily too much because we did cover it in the Bitcoin brief, but we did reject here right at the mid, basically all you need to know. So anyway, that is Bitcoin. Let's go to Ethereum, Solana. I'm going to cover them both together. Probably be a little shorter than I would like to because I do have some time constraints. I got to leave about 10 minutes. But let's just get it. Ethereum on the weekly. So this is something we looked at. This was a position that we looked at. I think this was a pre-parabolic trend. I think take profit here, roughly. I don't know where we got that from. Oh, it's from here, I think. There we go. Yeah, so this was the idea that I put in. I'll talk about this first because I want to get it rid of off my chart. But we talked about this previously. One, because I posted a video about Ethereum bottom. Go ahead and check it out. One of my best videos for the year, actually, as far as the views. But I mentioned that this roughly would be the drop. Seems, or the bottom, I should say. This does tend to be the case. We have some insight here. First of all, we have ran up since about 51% since. But one of the reasons I did this is because we had a midline push, a midline rejection here, and a bounce. So that was pretty good. To me, that's good enough, right? We also had the bullish wedge here, which when you get when you have the consolidation, which is this, when they both go down at the same time, when you get a wedge where one of them is flat, the other one's angled, that means it accelerates, okay? So we went from a bullish push to a super bullish push. That's the best way to explain that in like 2 seconds. And so that's one reason we have a big accelerated push like this. So we also have a flip of the RSI, which is really good. I know that doesn't look much, and sometimes, again, RSI doesn't always have its best day, but this is pretty significant because this is, almost every time that we've had a push, it's continued to run. Doesn't mean it's always effective, because like this, for example, from here, this was about break even or maybe lost a few percentages, but it has to go up at some point anyway. And so this is pretty good. And this is also why I'm telling people that this is not over. A lot of people want to fade this, and yeah, maybe you could fade it for the first week or two, but like I'm looking at like a 6 to 9 month perspective here, right? And so this, like I'm saying, like this might be the last chance we stay above 50 RSI until the end of the run, okay? And so that's why I'm looking at these things. That's why I look at EMAs, because you only get, 2 chances to look at Bitcoin under 200 EMA on the weekly per cycle. Just go ahead and look at this, all the chicken scratch here. Actually, I'm going to look at the Bitcoin index instead, and look at this for the previous cycle. And I remember doing a video on this. I did a few videos on this, and so we'll do logarithmic here just to make it clear. Back in the 2015, we had basically 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we had 5. We had quite a bit on the weekly here. Actually, I think it was the 2 week. I apologize. Maybe it was it was the 1 week. So. But the 2 week also does help. Like we only have had one cross underneath, or really just one cross under, I should say, in history, and it came right back up. That was your signal to get in. Okay, I can't tell you enough how easy of a signal that is. It's silly easy. Okay, so on the weekly, however, once you get it back above it, it's pretty good. On the 2017, 18 era, or I should say 19. It went down, it consolidated against it, broke back above. That was your bottom. Okay, that was your bottom reclaim. COVID on 2020 had a reclaim here. That was it. Okay, bottom here, consolidation, reclaim. That was the bottom. In every single case, this was the bottom. Okay, that was very, very, very close, but that stayed above. Okay, so in almost every instance except for the very first one, there was a reclaim, and that was the bottom of the trade. Okay, and so that's why I wanted to focus on that on Ethereum. Stuff like that is very easy. Now, going here, let's get off the logarithmic here. So off the weekly here, we have breached above the 200. Now, it doesn't always respect Ethereum as much. That's usually a Bitcoin thing, by the way. And so this is the target I'm looking at based off of the entry from that zone to the pre-parabolic trend line. Basically a solid 10R. Now I want to get rid of this because that's not really what I want to focus on. We did have a pretty good push up here, about 51%. I think from last candle alone was like, what, 30? It was 39. Wow. So we're currently getting a drop. I think there's a good case that we can be made for 2250 here. Very solid 200 EMA touch. I think it's very simplistic. So not much really you can gather other than that. Same thing here with the daily here. We're pushed against the 200. We had a reclaim here. This is not bad. I don't understand why this would be controversial to people. Getting just a classic retest here all across the board. Looking pretty good. We are oversold in the RSI, so that makes me think that we could come down just a little bit. And so if we do come back down, it does tend to continue to stay down for a little bit. And so we'll see how that goes. Here's a good example here from March where we kind of dropped down. That was the low for the time, or the high for the time. So we'll see how that goes. It could consolidate, it could go down, but that 2250 is another good level to work with. And that's where's it at here? 2250. It's roughly right at this bar anyway. So I could see us coming back down, bouncing back up, before the end of the week, something like that would suffice. So let's go to Solana here. And so this is something that we looked at. These are some positions that I was looking at. You can save those if you want, but I'm going to focus on more of the weekly perspective outlook on this. Weekly here, your levels are already set. You had your top level here at about 260, 250, whatever. And then you currently have your midline here. And then you have your previous, this was your previous deviation. This was a sign to get back in my opinion. So you have all this basically like so. You mark it from the top to the bottom of the candles. You're basically right at the mid. And so that's one reason why we have this mini rejection here. And so from a price action standpoint, actually I'll go to the Aroon first. Aroon consolidations leading into a wedge. Could be an acceleration here. RSI is above 50. All this is looking pretty good. If you wanted to do along here, this is exactly what I would do. About 10% on the stop loss. Entry just above the break, wherever that may be. About 37% here at about 3.7 R. So very simplistic there with that. Now the issue is going to be, when does this occur? And so we could get a rejection here. That may be a few weeks before we do that. So keep in mind, we could get as low. If you want to go into a mid time frame retest, this is your level right here. Okay. Actually, I'll pull that back in just a little bit for clarity's sake. And make it a little cleaner. So the downward marker on this would be about 148. So or on the low side 142. So anywhere between 142 to 150 is probably going to be a good area. And so if you do that instead, this would be your long signal instead. And so stop loss here and there. It's going to be a little bit lower, about 2.42. So keep in mind also, we did go above the 200 EMA. Again, like a 200 EMA is so classic on the weekly. I don't know why people don't pay attention to that. It's a very key opportunity for a lot of people. So anyway, that's kind of the weekly format with that one. Daily, you got that midline rejection, but you got that 200 EMA again. A lot of these coins are hitting over the 200 EMA on the daily. That is significant, because that means we are starting to flip on a major level. So anyway, that is the video. I hope you enjoyed it. I think I was all over the place and kind of ranting on some of the Bitcoin section, but I thought it was worth discussing. So let me know what your thoughts are. I'm happy to share things. Again, links are in the description if you're on YouTube. I hope you have a good day, a good week. I'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.